WMMC HD3 Detroit, KMPS HD3 Seattle, WBMX HD3 Boston.
And on AOL Radio and Yahoo Launchcast. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
Did Mothman warn about the 9/11 attacks on New York City? Can an encounter with he, she, or it have a benign effect on someone? Where does all this fit with a grand unified theory of the paranormal?
Hey there, and welcome to the 470th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and those mothy questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So this evening we bring you a guest we haven't spoken to in over 2 years. Wow, has it been that long?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Time flies when you're sort of having fun. And you're welcome to call in if you have questions or comments of your own, and the number is 248-545-7685.
Before we begin, a reminder that we will have a drawing in early October for 2 free tickets to the first New England UFO Conference in Leominster, Massachusetts on Saturday, October 26th. Among the speakers will be some of the UFO experts who are regulars on our show, Stanton Friedman, Kathleen Marden, and Peter Robbins, among others. And Ben and I will be there to interview them before a live audience, and they'll take questions from the audience as well. All you have to do to enter is to send an email to us at paul@behindtheparanormal.com or drop us a snail mail at Behind the Paranormal, care of WOON, 1240 AM, 985 Park Avenue, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, 02895. Please include your name, address, and phone number. There's no charge to enter. The drawing will take place on the air on Monday, October 7th. You can also write to us on Facebook and ask to enter as well. Behind the Paranormal page on Facebook. Okay, to our guest. Andrew Colvin is an artist, photographer, and writer in the Seattle area, domain of the great KMPS-FM. Andrew has been called his generation's Charles Fort, after the early 20th century chronicler of the unexplained. The parallel comes from Andrew's intensive documentation of synchronicities in relation to paranormal and conspiracy research, what he calls synchromysticism and synchroconspiracy. Following in the footsteps of Fortean author John A. Keel, Andrew has delved into mysteries that have had humans scratching their heads or screaming for millennia: UFOs, weird creatures, bizarre entities, magic, and the creative workings of the human mind. His approach blends a background of genuine paranormal experience with decades of research into parapolitics, art history, media behavior, and social psychology. He has also made quite a splash in the upper echelons of the art world. He is the author of The Mothman Speaks and The Mothman's Photographer 1, 2, and 3.
So Andrew Colvin, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Glad to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
great.
Sound perfect.
Yep.
Always trust landlines. So let's start with something that happened to you in the 1960s. Mothman. Whereas most people have reported utter terror in Mothman's presence, the old rascal seems to have blessed you. Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, it was still scary, let me tell you. I mean, it wasn't a walk in the park.
His arm around your shoulder, or his wing, whatever.
He did...
take you under his wing.
He did have a friend of mine on the shoulder at the same place that I saw him. And I didn't know that for many, many years until I met this old friend in Point Pleasant at one of the Mothman festivals.
What exactly was that about?
What's that?
What was the friend on the shoulder thing about? Not to digress. I'd never heard that before.
You haven't heard of the grabbing of the shoulder?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Well, yeah, I found out about it, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I suppose, and it's probably in Mothman Shrieks, which is the book that came after Mothman Speaks.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one of your books. Well, we'll talk about those later.
Yeah, but interesting story, and it was paralleled, weirdly, recently here on August 9th of this month, when I got a call from a friend and Mothman witness is somebody I knew here in Seattle who over time started having Mothman experiences, and he doesn't want any, he doesn't want publicity. He's not in it for anything. He doesn't really study the subject at all. He's not really, he's almost afraid of it. I think he doesn't really want to know exactly what's going on, but because he just has all kinds of strange experiences, not just with seeing Mothman. He's seen it 3 times now in Seward Park in Seattle, and on August 9th he saw it again, and it didn't grab him on the shoulder, but he saw it glowing in the woods. And then when he got home, it came to him in a dream and told him to remember door 11. And
Door who?
Door 11.
Oh.
And it was grabbing at his toe with a hand that changed into a talon. Now, sometimes he'll talk about dreams, and then you find out later it was a vision, like he was actually awake. And so, but most of his experiences are out in daylight, walking. He was actually with someone who saw this.
So there were multiple witnesses.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. How do we know this was Mothman and not some other, what we might call, multiversal creature of some kind? Obviously, something's going on, but would it be the same Mothman as his gained fame in Point Pleasant, in your opinion? Or could
yes
there be
and no.
more? All right.
On the grand scale, the absolute scale, I guess you could say they're the same in a way. But on the relative scale, who knows? It's a way for, I think, consciousness to make itself known. Areas of the subconscious that are below the threshold of consciousness to come to people in certain ways, to interact with them. It's part of themselves. It's part of the collective unconscious. It's a big energy force that continues to manifest, and people happen to see it in certain forms. And I think it does matter what kind of form you see it in, because sometimes people will see a demon or an angel or a ghost, and they'll ask, well, was that Mothman? Or they'll say, is Mothman, you say it's good, but maybe it's bad.
Yeah.
And so my answer to that is, if you're seeing Mothman, it's scary, but check yourself, because no one's ever really been harmed by it that we know of. And look into why you're afraid. And it doesn't seem to, it seems to mirror whatever is going on in the percipient. Its form may stay the same, pretty close. So there's little differences in what people see, but it stays basically the same. And it matters that you would see it in that form. If you see a 14-legged goat, that's another thing. That is satanic. But the different archetypes are out there, and they've been identified, and the Garuda's been identified for thousands of years. And there are books out where, like I have one here called The 7 Questions of Garuda, which is from the Ramayana. And if this creature, Mothman, is a Garuda, then you can apply some of the ancient textual concepts about him and see if it fits the story of Mothman, and it does, to me. And I do think that it could indeed be the Garuda.
Garuda being the proverbial thunderbird or that sort of thing. Is that what you mean?
Thunderbird is, I think, the same, but...
Yeah, well, these are relative terms that we use because we don't understand these things.
Yeah, but the natives, they're not all hunky-dory about the Thunderbird necessarily. They are concerned about the Thunderbird being maybe taking people away and so forth.
Yeah.
We don't know that that's happened with Mothman, but maybe it has. I don't know.
Well, I remember when I was like 12 in growing up near Hartford, Connecticut, and a lot of the stuff that was going on in Point Pleasant at the time, which was the height of the 66, 67, the height of the Mothman period, so to speak. My mother would point out stories in the Hartford Courant about giant birds and what people were seeing in Point Pleasant. And so I remember that, and I can see where people have a certain thing that they see, they don't understand it, and their mind takes it and makes it something they can understand, such as a giant bird. So I know exactly, and I think I understand what you're saying, Andrew. I might even go you one better. Ben and I both might go you one better. And this conclusion I started to arrive at in the 70s during exorcism cases, excuse me, that I was working on with a priest when I was a seminary student. And I said, these theories about what's really going on here aren't good enough. The servants of the devil and all, the theological baggage this stuff has. And I began to look at some of the possibilities for, as you say, these things sort of being aspects of ourselves. Not that they're not real, but in the subconscious, which, in my opinion, is made up of the totality of one's life, which includes, who knows, maybe billions of parallel lives in the quantum multiverse, if you will, if you believe in that sort of thing. And these so-called demons were what we call today parasites, and were aspects of these people. You share the life indiscriminately of every other living thing, and the Mothman thing may be just going from what you said, might be matching up with some of these ideas, maybe. I don't know if you agree, but I see what your point is on that anyway. So, but tell us about. So do you want to respond to that, or you want to just go and tell us about your own experience?
Well, I could do both, because my experience, maybe not personally, but in this location where I saw the creature or something, other people saw all kinds of other things.
Interesting. Yeah.
You have a shape-shifting phenomenon. So you can have Mothman, you can have the Virgin Mary, you can have a Native American Man in Black type thing, Black Panther, invisible thing that moves but can't see it, or dark, shadowy, elemental type forms. The Garuda is a subduer of elemental earth spirits. He's like a policeman of all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of maybe a bigger formation of energy, and that's why the Buddhists have him above the Buddha in their paintings. He's like the sky. He represents the background ether, connects everything, and in that way, he also represents conscious. And I think that's how he works.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right on that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, exactly. And it's the entire Mothman phenomenon. And what we do is we always look not at somebody comes to us usually with a ghost case. That's most of my background is that. Oh, well, we have to cut. I'm going to have to wait until the end of the break to continue our conversation because it's break time, of course. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio, and we have our marvelous guest tonight, Andrew Colvin. Welcome back after several years. We'll be right back to talk about Mothman and related subjects, so stay with us.
Enlighten, empower, enrich. This is CBS Radio's The New Sky. New horizons, no boundaries.
Itself down to dust. I wanna be with you. I'm gonna be with you. Color. When you again start hoping with your Oh, we'll be right. We'll be right. Dancing like water with the light. Oh, dance with me. Won't you dance with me into the color of the dusk? Oh, dance with me into the colors of the dusk. Dance with me to the colors of the dusk.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
Okay, and welcome back to Behind the Paranormal. We're speaking this evening with Andrew Colvin, a sort of a renaissance man of the paranormal, a modern Fortean fellow, and we're talking about Mothman experiences, of which he had one that turned out rather well. Andrew, of all your experiences, could you tell us about the one that sort of changed your life with Mothman?
Well, I had it stretched over about a 5-year period, so it's hard to. But I had a sighting, a far away, just kind of impersonal kind of a sighting when I was that would have been the late '66. But I had a creepy feeling that he was trying to communicate with me. Mm-hmm. And about a few months later, my friend said the Mothman was visiting him a lot and had given him certain predictions about the future and about his life, and many of which came true. And then this kid said he could share this vision with me that Mothman had given him of something that would happen in 2001, which would be an attack on New York City that would start World War III. Mm. And so we did a little blood brother pact and he held my hand and stood in a certain spot, and I did see that. And it was the kind of thing that was just so far out that it almost became subconscious, but I couldn't be around him after that. I was terrified of the situation, and I really kind of repressed all of that whole memory. But I always, remembered him, and everyone else did too, because he was telling other people this too.
Now, you saw the attack?
A little window opened up in my mind, and I saw it was a plane or a missile, something coming in and hitting, but it wasn't like it was on TV.
Yeah,
it was somewhat different, but it was basically the same.
All right.
So, because I didn't know what it was going to look like at that time, so it seemed to me that there were more buildings, maybe tall buildings there than just the two.
Okay.
But I did see that domed thing that's in the World Trade Center. I did see that.
Now, did you say this was in 1966?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you were living in West Virginia, were you, at the time?
That's right.
Okay. All right.
And so then 5 years later, I saw something come out of a tree at that same spot where he and I had seen that other thing. And that seemed to be, that was when I was 13 and sort of going through that time in life where you may have a paranormal experience, sort of that, what do you call it?
The poltergeist thing, the common theory, yeah.
Well, when tribal people put their kids through a ceremony to become an adult at that time, and it usually involves some hallucination type experiences where they...
Vision quest and things like that.
Yeah, vision quest or whatever.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing, I think, in a way that just was created for me. And it seemed like it was maybe connected to my dad, who had died just before that. And then other family members had strange dreams. We had the same dreams. People were having the same dreams.
Yeah, that's happened to Ben and myself.
Mm. Yeah, it seemed like my dad had... we all had this dream about him in this window, and then I guess it was 2005, my sister sent me a snapshot, and in the snapshot, in that window, there is a face of what looks like a Garuda. Okay. And that's the so-called Mothman photograph. what we don't know what it is exactly, but it's very tantalizing to look at it and see the symbolism, the similarities between that and also the Thunderbird. It looks like a Thunderbird.
Yeah. I'd like to see that.
Maybe, the Garuda has, and Thunderbirds are associated with death, but the protectors of the dead. They put Thunderbird totems in native cemeteries, so maybe Mothman performs a similar role where he was somehow watching over my dad's spirit or something, because he may have fallen victim to the Men in Black.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just before you go on with that, I really relate to what you're saying, because we have we kind of live in a rather strange place. We've done whole shows about things that have happened around here, usually on our other station, but we have a lot of guardians around here. I don't believe they're spirits. I think they're perfectly physical from other, what we call them, dimensions, universes. Not the same thing, but in physics. But for example, there's a large. I keep running into these bear-like things. One I encountered in an attic near Buffalo, New York, during a case. People thought it was a ghost, as they usually do, and it turned out to be something entirely rather noble, actually. And I have seen a bear-like creature walking by our window, whom I immediately knew was a guardian, because we're into a lot of interesting stuff and we need all the help we can get. But in any case, let me ask you exactly where in Point Pleasant these events occurred, the thing coming out of the tree and the Mothman sighting you were describing earlier, because just to give us some kind of perspective, was it in or near the TNT area, so-called, or was it outside of town, in town, what?
Well, it's up the river there. The Kanawha River comes into Point Pleasant and meets the Ohio.
Right.
So if you drive up the Kanawha about 45 minutes, you get to Mound, West Virginia, which is where Charles Manson lived for a couple of years. And
I know. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Strange. It's got an old history. But what you were saying about the bear, let me just go back to that for a second, because in addition to this thing in the window, and everyone's sort of having dreams about this window, I had many dreams about a big bear-like creature that would walk past. We had this cliff behind our house that went up, not down. And there was this narrow pathway between there, and I would always dream that this big creature was out there. And at times it seemed like it was speaking to me in my dreams.
Yeah.
And like I got some sort of tutelage from it or something. I also dreamed of that same creature back there, and I had it. That was the scariest dream I ever had. I had it repeatedly for many, many years, and it finally ended when the creature changed into a dog.
Really?
Dog. That's interesting.
I don't know. That is interesting. I've had some beautiful experiences with some of these. I call them neighbors from Parallel, whatever. And one of them was, and I wondered if you'd ever run into this in that area or anywhere else. And again, I think these are not manifestations of the same thing. Personally, my experience is they're separate creatures, but sometimes they are very aware of what's happening, and a lot of them, I suppose, are trying to help us. Some are just neutral. They just you happen to run into them, and they're just as shocked as you are. But there's a creature, and we had the show with Jerry Warner on this, who takes photographs of these things, but that has they have rather I suppose horse-like bodies with human faces. And I actually saw one of these on our property at our old house before we moved here. That was just a strange one. And I don't know. There are all kinds of things out there. So I don't know. We're talking about your experience, not mine, so we'll continue. But it's funny that there do seem to be parallels between the experiences of many people, certainly including yourself. Well, let me ask you this, Andrew. I'm thinking of a few recent guests who have sort of gotten into this area. Notably Ted Phillips, the UFO landing expert who has decades worth of evidence for the physical landings of these things. He was talking about places like Marley Woods in Missouri, where people sometimes come out with knowledge they never had. And you yourself came out of this whole experience, you believe, with enhanced knowledge, particularly talent in art and things of this kind. Could you tell us what happened to you in that regard, and whether you think it was the area you went into, as other people have, or what's going on with that?
That's a good question. I mean, for what you were saying, I think one way to look at that is the circuitry of the nervous system, and there are sort of as a way to visualize how this stuff happens. And I think the universe kind of works the same in certain ways everywhere, and maybe our nervous system is a key to understanding how information is transmitted, because you have receptors. I think there's about 4 kinds of receptors, but they can, it depends on which way the signal's going and whether that each of those has an acceptance lock or key to it or a rejection key. They have different functions. So there's more than 4 examples. It's like at least 8 or 16. So then you have once you have that many possibilities with how messages get transferred, then you have a wide variety of things that can happen. You can have people that one person's standing there and sees it and the other one doesn't, because that one doesn't have the receptor.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. And I've seen things in the presence of as many as 8 or 10 people, including cops. Sometimes the thing that's being seen can override all of those and have everyone see it. That's true, yeah.
In my experience, I think it's sort of wired because it is, I don't know if it's geomagnetic. I think there's something to that. Mm-hmm. In our case, this place was where a school had been burned down, and I wonder if Charles Manson didn't burn that down. Mm. And it killed a couple of kids, so I think maybe some sort of ghost phenomenon occurred in a way where the ghosts were crying out for justice, and somehow the Mothman got involved because he's the policeman of this kind of stuff. Mm. And maybe things that were in those kids were sent out into the trees. Because I saw my thing come out of a tree. It could be that animals or trees or plants store some of this stuff. If you're coming around in a close proximity or time-wise, like the trees that were there when that happened were still there, and et cetera, et cetera. So it could be that that's sort of a transmission from a traumatic event. The whole area has a tremendous amount of old, ancient energy, and it was never changed by the Ice Age. So that valley is still the same as it was prior to the Ice Age. And all of those different mounds and things, thousands of mounds and earthworks, it was a place where the Indians buried their dead and probably did all kinds of rituals and things that could amplify any kind of thing that's happening now, like a crime or anything else, and start a ball rolling where a bunch of things are seen. And the good effects of it are, I think the simple fact that you are introduced to something outside of what's supposed to be possible rewires your brain a bit, makes more things possible. So I've always been the kind of person that, regardless of what's going on, I'm looking for a miracle, the magic, and I believe it enough that it happens. And sometimes I just through random synchronicity I get information, I get answers to things, I get contacts and things, and I just try to. I don't fight it because I know that just fighting it isn't going to work. I mean, it mess you up more than it does just going with the flow, seeing where it leads you. Okay. Trusting the universe a bit. And sometimes these things will happen right when you've been traumatized the most, as it did with me. Mm-hmm. Maybe turn me around or something and kept me from imploding.
Well, very definite possibility. We're coming up on another break, though, and we'll have to advise you to stay with us, everyone. We're talking with Andrew Colvin this evening. It's Behind the Paranormal on CBS New Sky Radio. We will be right back, so stay with us.
Discover your spirit. Listen to Spirit Guide Radio, where leading spiritual experts serve as guides to nourish your soul. Every weeknight from 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Heidi Hollis, The Outlander. The Zodiac Girls with Solaris, Laura, and Kira. Ask Dr. Doug with Dr. Doug Lear. PSI 911 with Katie, Rhonda, and Christy. Life by Number with Celeste. And Your Reiki Journey with Heidi Harrison. Spiritually Speaking Radio for the soul. CBS Radio's The Sky. Believe.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
Welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. We have our esteemed guest, Andrew Colvin. And right now we're in the middle of talking of Fortean phenomena.
Exactly. Well, before we go back to that, I wanted to give Andrew a chance to talk about his books, his blog.
Yeah, we burned through this hour like nothing.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. Good conversation. So go ahead.
Oh, well, the blog is at Forteans West, Forteans West.org, I think, or com. Geez, I can't remember.
On your name.
Just Google it really quickly.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm on Mothy Talk on Facebook. We have a good group there. We have some pretty heavy hitters. Webb Tarpley, Ken Thomas, Adam Gorightly, Tessa Dick, who's Philip K. Dick's wife. She wrote a nice intro to a new book I'm working on. And the books are on Amazon. And the music from my band, Interdimensional Vortex League, is on iTunes, Amazon, and CD Baby.
Cool.
Got lots of music. The new book, I'm doing 2 books on John Keel. Well, they're John Keel reprints, or not reprints, but actually they're articles, collections of articles that have never been published since the 60s. And Tessa wrote a nice intro for it, comparing some of the things that happened in West Virginia in the Mothman situation and what happened with her and Philip K. Dick that spurred the Valis trilogy that he wrote. It's very similar stuff. The guy that's seen Mothman many times here in Seattle has the same kind of blue sprite-like light that comes to him, that came to Philip K. Dick. And also, I have a niece that's had that happen. And there's actually been one in the house I live in right now, although I haven't seen it. We've got one here in my house.
Well, this kind of transitions us right into the notion, I suppose, unless, Ben, you have some more questions on this subject, but of the, I suppose, what we call the grand unified theory of the paranormal, if you will.
Of course, you have your terms synchro-mysticism and synchro-conspiracy, which is sort of very similar.
Well, okay, well, why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, so we shall now talk about synchro-mysticism and synchro-conspiracy. What are those things?
One is, well, they're a little different. It all started in 2006 when, and I write about this in the introduction to the Keel book. It's called Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, and it should be out this week, actually, or next week on Amazon. What was I talking about there?
Flying Saucer to the Center of the Mind.
No, before that.
Oh.
The title. The minute I said the title, I forgot what I was talking about.
Well, we're talking about John Keel, and actually, no, we weren't talking about John. We're talking about what is synchromysticism?
Yeah.
Ah, yes, synchromysticism. Yeah. Yes. 2006. Several of us from the local area had met John Keel in 2003 at the Mothman statue unveiling, and we all had weird stuff happen for 5 straight years, or 6 maybe, right up until when he died.
No kidding.
And it seemed connected to him. I mean, we had I can't get into it, but he was connected somehow. And one of the things we had was the 1111 number that kept coming up. And it wasn't coming up in trivial ways. It was like really serious ways, like a man in black van with a 111 license plate, trailing two of the guys in our group. And this led to a phone call, which came soon after that, which we traced to an address, 1111 Independence Avenue in Akron. And then we looked at the map, satellite map, and saw that the building looked like an 11 from the sky. But it was a very Masonic 11.
I think I've heard this.
And the history of this place is that it used to be a sacred Indian site. Mm-hmm. And now it's a mall. And
oh dear.
Then they built, after I reported on this, then they built some more buildings that in the back there were 111L. And 111L looks just like 1111, but that was the license plate of the Man in Black van. It was actually 111L.
Do you think the architects were deliberately doing this, or, in my opinion, more likely they were sort of subconsciously inspired by energies at the site to design the buildings that way? What say you?
It seems like it. It seems like it. And the weird thing is, I finally decided to go there and check it out on the ground. And when I get there, I find out there was a Mothman sighting a week before.
Wow.
Like less than a mile away.
In a rural area, urban area, where?
In Akron. This was reported on the Monroe Falls, I think, paranormal group. They were the ones that investigated, so I'm not just, grabbing this out of thin air. It actually happened.
No, I mean, I know Akron, but was it in a park, in a wooded area of a park, or was it on, somebody's bedroom? I was going
to say somebody's house, garage.
I was standing next to the road. Next to the road where cars were going by. Mm-hmm. And so this triggered an investigation and all this, and so I started really looking at 1111 and where it came from, and tracked it back to the Masonic orders and George Washington and maybe Joseph K. Smith as well, getting in on the action. And so this, I think, I don't know how synchromysticism got started exactly, like why it caught on. It seemed like to me that people were really fascinated with this 111 thing and sort of took off and ran with it. And in a way, it seems like I kind of feel like it might be a diversion to call it synchromysticism. I prefer synchroconspiracy. Okay. Because it seemed to lead a lot of people off into looking at movies and stuff like that, and predictive programming in movies and cartoons and stuff, which is all fine. But I think my point was synchronicity can help you actually find out real stuff. Like, just find out anything.
Oh, yeah. We've done whole shows on synchronicity. We've found out a lot. But what's interesting is I never had the pleasure of meeting John Keel, which I think is a shame because we had the same background in journalism, especially, this kind of thing. So you actually met John, of course, and you had these experiences. Why did you think they were connected with him in this period, this 5-year period after you met him at Point Pleasant? Okay.
Because in 2002, when we started our video series, the 33-hour thing that we did on Mothman, we saw three of us saw three shimmering beings at this site where everybody had seen Mothman. And then the next Mothman Fest was right after that, when we went and met Keel. And then one of the people that was with me when we saw those three beings saw the same three beings in the Low Hotel when John Keel was staying there. And then I'm in the next room, and I hear three voices. One of them sounded like John Keel. And I was convinced it was John Keel talking to me. So the phenomenon was mimicking John Keel, and it seemed to be connected to our site. And that was, by the way, on the 50th anniversary of that flyover of Washington, D.C., when all the UFOs went over Washington, D.C.
Oh, 1952?
Yeah, we didn't know it at the time. It's the exact 50-year anniversary of that.
More synchronicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I don't know. See, these areas that, at least according to what I've seen or what we've seen, is that there are areas of overlaps between, such as the Mothman period in the 60s in the Ohio Valley, where we've talked to people down there who had, they were kids at the time, but they had poltergeist experiences, ghost things, you get red eyes looking in the window, footsteps on the roof, men in black. Well, you know the whole story. You name it, it happened. And I'm wondering if perhaps we're having overlaps of different parallel realities because of the circumstances and the ducks being lined up for that. And the ghosts were not necessarily connected with Mothman, or the UFOs weren't necessarily connected with the poltergeist, all this kind of thing. But the same process was allowing all sorts of things to manifest, such as when you open your screen door in the summer and a fly and a mosquito come in. And the fly and the mosquito aren't necessarily cousins or related, they aren't necessarily connected, but they still come in because of the same process, the door being open. So that's the sort of thing that has occurred to me over the years. Okay, we have to, I guess we're going to take another break here. And
go to our final segment of the show.
For the final segment of the show. And we'll be right back with Andrew Colvin on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS News Sky Radio. And stick with us.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you ready to feel healthy, clear, and grounded? Is it time to feel like yourself again? Hi, this is Shay Parker, founder of Best American Healers. If you answered yes to any of the questions that I just asked, NowAgeWellness.com can help. Danita Nicole, also known as Dee, is a spiritually based healing practitioner who founded Now Age Wellness. Dee has trained under master teachers to perfect her healing techniques. I personally recommend Dee if you are looking to reclaim yourself in more ways than one. Learn more about Dee's services at NowAgeWellness.com and let your healing begin.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. Something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
And welcome back
to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. We are talking of synchro conspiracies, because usually we stay away from conspiracies, but tonight we're going to be a little adventurous.
Well, there are paranormal connections. So, Andrew Colvin is our guest. Andrew, there's only a few minutes left because we have a lot of announcements tonight, but what is the deal with synchro conspiracies? How is it
done? What is it?
How's it done? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it happens to everyone. I've had people say, how do I make that happen? And I don't exactly know how to say how to do it other than you try to practice. You have to have a trusting mind. Okay, like, got to believe that you can just crack open a book and find something. Because I found a lot of things that way.
Well, we're educated out of that, which is why I think it's a natural thing to do, what you just described, but it's educated out of us at an early age, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's happened many times. And when you were talking about the mosquitoes, I was thinking that you could have a third one that was a drone, and that would sort of exemplify what Keel's main message, I guess, in the book I'm doing is that there's two. Well, it's not so much his message; it's my message. But he was talking about two different things. He was talking about UFOs that were real, natural phenomenon, and then sometimes he was talking about real man-made objects and how they'd found man-made things at different flying saucer sites. But he didn't really come out and say it. Like, you need to really look at every case and see if it's the real phenomenon or some spooks mimicking the phenomenon, because that's really what could be behind a lot of the, quote, predictive programming, is that they're simply mimicking stuff that's already out there to use in ops. And that's a real old tactic. to mimic things. And then it
is actually,
gets so confusing for people to tell what's going on when you've got false things, and they're not even false. I mean, they can actually make you see things with radio waves. They can make you hear things. Mm-hmm. The whole thing, the drone. I do think a lot of the Men in Black covering up, harassing researchers and witnesses was about, there may be a breakaway civilization that it could be composed of ex-Nazis and all kinds of international bigwigs, bankers who have round drones or flying saucers and all kinds of stuff, and they just didn't want anybody to know that they were building them. And a lot of them seem to happen. A lot of the sightings happen around petrochemical plants and nuclear plants, where
you really go for broke with this stuff.
But wouldn't it be a little too obvious for Men in Black to be operating the way they do?
Well, I don't know that they're operating that way now, but at least in Point Pleasant, I think they needed to move everything out to Area 51. That's the rumor, the local rumor. And they were building craft there or something.
It was definitely what happened to me out there one time.
Definitely nuclear. So when that stuff got moved, they needed to sort of shut the town down, and the Men in Black were there to do that.
What about your father's experience with the Men in Black? I know we only got a few more minutes, but you mentioned earlier on that there might have been a connection with his dad.
Yeah, he was working for one of the companies that would be involved in that, which is Union Carbide, who was behind the Manhattan Project, and they had German partners helping them. The Lind Company, who got a lot of Tesla's patents. So they had lasers and they had all the technology. My dad was working for him. He was an expert in different kinds of engines and things, and I think he may have been working on these or known something about them. And he was also at the Philadelphia experiment. He was located there when it happened, and maybe it had to do with that. But they were definitely watching us for some reason.
Okay. Well, this is a deep well. I can see that, and I think we're definitely going to have you back. It's not going to be another 2 years. But, Andrew, thank you for a fascinating conversation. I hate to let you go a little early, but we've got a lot of announcements tonight.
Indeed we do.
And we'll be in touch to reschedule. And, again, your blog, if you could give that one more time.
forteanswest.whatever.com, and click on Washington State and go to Mothy Talk on Facebook. Ask us to join up.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for a great conversation. We'll be in touch off the air, and you sent some music, and we'll be looking at that and doing all kinds of interesting stuff. So thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, very good. All right, everyone. We do have a lot of announcements tonight. The first one is a very sad one, I'm sorry to say. We've just received word before the show from our good friend Peter Robbins, well-known UFO expert, especially on the Rendlesham case. Dear friends in UFO studies, I've just gotten off the phone with Jesse Marcel Jr.'s daughter. Jesse Marcel, of course, was Jesse Marcel Jr. was a doctor in the West who was the son of Jesse Marcel Sr., the military officer who first investigated the Roswell incident in 1947. And Jesse was a young boy at the time, and we had the pleasure of having him with us on June 2nd on our show. You can look back at our podcast for that. Very interesting show. But anyway, Peter Robbins writes that he just got off the phone with his daughter Denise, and a bearer of extremely sad news. Jesse has passed away, likely from a heart attack. This is just today. He was alone at home when it happened. A UFO book by his side. That's Jesse. He was a giant to many of us, a modest man, certainly was, whose father, Major Jesse Marcel, was the Roswell Army Airfield Base intelligence officer, the first to reach and examine the Roswell crash debris field. So we express our prayers and our love and our hope and Godspeed to Jesse Marcel Jr., who would have been was beginning to be a good friend of ours, marvelous fellow, and to his family, and again, Godspeed. As we don't believe in death, it is simply translation, and there we have it. So, okay, another announcement, a little bit more.
On the bright side.
On the bright side, I guess. Well, it's a bright side, but I mean, this is something a little more immediate calendar-wise. On December 8th, we are scheduled to do our 500th show, and that will be right here.
Can you believe it?
Can you believe it? Time flies. And that will be right here on CBS News Sky. We'd like to hear your suggestions for what you'd like us to do with that show. Let us know which guest you might like to have back, or whether you'd like Ben and I to do a certain paranormal topic from our own experience, as we sometimes do. So we'd like to
or maybe
hear
a
from
guest
you.
that we've never had on.
Yeah, that's true too. Let us know on the Behind the Paranormal show page on Facebook. Drop us an email at paul@behindtheparanormal.com or ben at behindtheparanormal.com. Or write to us at Behind the Paranormal Radio and TV, care of WOON, 1240 AM, 985 Park Avenue, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, 02895. All right. So let's wrap it up here. You can find my books. Ben, did you have any further comment on that?
No.
Okay. So past guests, new guests we haven't had, something you want Ben and I to do ourselves, short of acrobatics, and we'd be happy to.
Live acrobatics on the air.
Our 500th show, December 8th. So you can find my books on Barnes & Noble Nook e-reader and Amazon Kindle, also on Amazon.com. Faces at the Window, Footsteps in the Attic, Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. And we are working on a few more, and we're also working to turn those into audio books, so stay tuned on that. Because so many have requested it, we are doing that.
Alrighty. So visit our show website, behindtheparanormal.com, where you can find over 500 free podcasts of all our past shows. Also, check out our site at www.newenglandghosts.com, where there are case studies, photos, along with articles by my dad.
And if you buy my books on either of those sites, you'll help keep those podcasts free. Also on our sites, you'll find direct links to several charities that Ben and I have adopted, including USA Cares and Canadian Veterans Advocacy.
So many thanks to our producer, Brandon Jackson. And next week, we will offer you a rebroadcast because it will be Labor Day weekend here in the United States.
In the meantime, tune into our Boston Providence Drive Time show on the aforementioned WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 Pacific every Monday. And we leave you this evening with a thought from American novelist Nicholas Sparks. The saddest people I've ever met in life are the ones who don't care deeply about anything at all. Passion and satisfaction go hand in hand, and without them, any happiness is only temporary because there's nothing to make it last. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time.